I really had to stretch to new heights that I didn't realize were going to be required as I got to this level. So we'll get into that. But that's what this episode is all about. How is she doing all of this? I would love to know, what is the real deal behind the scenes. You're in luck, because we're going to get into it right now. Hey, Courtney Sanders here. Welcome back to my podcast. If you are listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, you can always come on over to my YouTube channel in order to watch the video version of this episode. But as I am recording this, we are in the last week of the year. And so I couldn't end the year without, of course, doing a wrap up, right? A lessons learned episode. And so that's what this podcast is going to be about. And I wanted to do a lot of lessons that I've learned, particularly in my business, because this has been a year of growth. You hear me? A year of growth. And I don't just mean in terms of revenue, even though it has been a year of growth in revenue, which I am very excited about and very grateful for, but it has been a year of growth just in my team and our product offering, but most importantly in me personally, right? And me as a person in my capacity. I really had to stretch to new heights that I didn't realize were going to be required as I got to this level. So we'll get into that. But that's what this episode is all about. So if you've been following my journey and you're like, man, how is she doing all of this? I would love to know, what is the real deal behind the scenes. You're in luck, because we're going to get into it right now. All right. So this first lesson that I learned, which I feel like I started to get a hint of this lesson in 2021, but it really came full force for me in 2023, is this idea that the question is not, do you have what it takes, but rather, do you have who it takes? In other words, the principal thing is not how, but who. Do you have the right people? And this has been such an eye-opener for me, because I didn't realize how much working with people and having a team is necessary to really achieve some of the higher goals and some of the higher heights that we have in life. And I think part of this is because, at least here in America and US culture, there's a lot of focus on individuality. We watch TV shows or read magazines with, these great founders of these companies, or, these CEOs, or even these celebrities and whatever. And in the US, everything is very much focused on individualism and like the person who is leading the charge, or the person who is the name. And so when we think of, say, Apple, even though Steve Jobs has, passed away over a decade, now we still think of, Steve Jobs, or Microsoft. We still think of Bill Gates, even though Bill Gates hasn't been the CEO of Microsoft in a really long time. Same thing with Amazon. We're like, oh, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is no longer the CEO of Amazon. But these big companies that many of us entrepreneurs and business owners, aspire to take lessons from, we're always thinking of that one person, and we fail to realize how the people that we see who are leading the charge would not have been able to create what they have created, and would not have been able to achieve what they have achieved had they not had the ability to really surround themselves with talented people, and, to get people to want to do the work towards a shared vision. And so even as I've been looking at the things that I've been able to accomplish this year we launched our fully accredited life coaching certification, which I'm so excited about and so proud about. Middle of this year, around June or July, I think I started promoting that as we were rolling out. And so we've had our first few pilot cohorts. And so it's just been a joy to see this program grow. Also been challenges, working out the kinks and kind of getting all of these things together. But even successfully launching my own coaching certification program, which still feels insane. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not just a coach, right? I'm not just a life coach. I'm not just a business coach. I don't just have a coaching business. I now have a coaching certification company. Like, I am an accredited coaching certification provider. In a sense, I'm kind of a coaching school now, which is like, again, very, very crazy and very, very strange to say. But for the record, right, if you ever, hear an interview with me and I don't credit somebody else, that something's up or that wasn't really me on the interview. For the record, I will be the first to say that me even doing that, right, coming up with and releasing my own accredited coaching certification would not have been possible were it not for other people, right? Working with other people who had knowledge and expertise in that area, who had connections with the accrediting bodies, who were able to facilitate that entire process, right? I just got my coaching certification this year as well. Up until this point, I've grown my business without a coaching certification, but, I foresaw that I think a certification is going to be more important as, the years go on in the coaching industry. In fact, I've talked about this on a few videos, but I know I talked about this recently in terms of the trends that I feel like you should pay attention to in the coaching industry. And I do believe that we're going to start to see more regulation. I think the coaching industry up until this point has been a bit of a kind of like wild, wild west. And, people have just, been kind of throwing their hat out there, throwing their hat in the ring and saying like, hey, I'm a coach. And I think that's great because I think everybody has expertise that they should share and everybody should coach in some way. But I also recognize that the industry is craving, I think, more standardization around a process that people go through in order to create that change. And people just want to know that the people who are billing themselves as coaches actually have the ability to do what they say that they can do. So I think that's where we're going to see more and more rise in demand for coaching certifications, which is why I, after years of, not having one and frankly feeling like I didn't need one, decided to buckle down and get my own, but also why I've shifted the focus in my business to providing a certification for other people. But again, I realized in this process, like for me, creating the certification process really exemplifies this shift because for the first time, I didn't sit down and ask myself, do I have what it takes, right? Am I knowledgeable enough? Am I smart enough to make this happen? Like this in and of itself was a feat that I knew was beyond my capability and beyond my capacity. So instead of looking at myself and saying, do I have what it takes? It forced me to shift my focus and to ask, do I have who it takes? And thankfully, I did have the people that it took in order to make this happen. So again, I'm very fortunate about that. I've been focusing on building my team and we had the talent within the team in order to make this happen. But I knew within myself, this is not something that I would have been able to do. And so I really wanted to talk about this first because this is such a huge lesson that I think more people would be successful if they recognize this. And particularly more women would be successful if they recognize this. And I'll just say it, more Black women, right? More African-American women would be successful if they realize this. And for the record, right? I know many African-American women are very successful. I know African-American women are, killing it in corporate America, especially in climbing the ranks. I want to say we're the fastest demographic of people who are starting businesses. We're the fastest demographic in terms of getting college education. So for the record, I know Black girl magic has been well on display lately, but I say this because I just think about the conversations that I have with my other Black female friends, whether they're in corporate America or in entrepreneurship. And a lot of the focus is on showing others or showing other people that they have what it takes, right? Like we're smart, we can do this, we're strong, like, other people need to recognize that. And I think part of that is based on cultural upbringing. I mean, you talk to, any successful Black person, male or female, I know this was the case for me growing up, and I know this is the case for a lot of my friends. They will tell you that our parents told us from a very early age, you're going to have to work, twice as hard and be twice as good, right? In order to get even half the results that others are getting because, you are African-American in this country. And so I think a lot of us, especially in my generation as a millennial, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting to elder millennial. But those of us, especially, in this generation, recognize that our whole lives, we've been on this kind of treadmill of always going above and beyond, always showing that we're smarter than the average bear, we're faster, than the average bear, we're, we can hang in there longer, we can do more in order to prove our worth. And so while that has been great in us collectively, creating gains, particularly in the African-American community, and particularly for those of us who are Black women, I'm now recognizing that that only goes so far, right? If everything is dependent on you and everything is based on how smart you are, how talented you are constantly in this like mindset of showing everybody that like, no, I am as good or better than you think I am. That mindset is actually a mindset that you need to let go of to get to the other level, right? I always say each level operates according to its own logic, and the logic that got you in this level is not the logic that's going to get you into the next level. Operating according to that mindset is actually going to make you bump your head up against what you need to break through in order to get to the next level, because to get to the next level, the focus actually is not about on you and your capacity. And so for me, this was like, mind blowing to me, right? Because my whole life it's been like, how can I be better? How can I be faster? How can I be smarter? How can I, increase my competence? But if you are a big dreamer and you have really, really big goals, there are some things that literally you're not going to have the competence to do. Like, you're just not going to be good enough. And it doesn't matter. And it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a woman or you're a minority or African American, nothing to do with that, right? And I think, again, a lot of us have to recognize when we're getting to this level in our personal and professional aspirations and be okay with maybe putting down some of those mindsets that we've been raised with this constant, like, oh my goodness, I need to do better and be more in order to prove ourselves. We're going to have to put that aside and say, this goal is so big, this task is like so beyond me that by definition, I'm not good enough, right? And I say that in air quotes. Like, obviously I'm good enough to have the vision and I'm good enough to put the people and the resources together in order to achieve it. But no one is good enough to achieve this thing, right? No one person is good enough. Again, it doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman or what their ethnicity is. No one is big enough or better enough in order to achieve this particular goal. By definition, this goal requires that I bring other people into the fold. Therefore, my mindset has to not be, do I have what it takes, or constantly asking myself if I have what it takes, or seeking if I can make myself better so that I can have what it takes in order to achieve this goal. My shift and my focus has to be on, do I have who it takes? And again, I do feel like the individualistic American culture does us a disservice because we see all of these success stories, and the media and, magazines and newspapers and everything, they like to zero in and like focus on that individual persons, like what they did, right? Oh, Jeff Bezos, what's your morning routine? Or Warren Buffett, like, how many books do you read or whatever, as if that person were capable of creating everything that they created on their own. And that is just a myth. Like, literally, that is an American myth. That is not true. None of the people that we, again, look to in the entrepreneurial space or elsewhere would have been able to create the huge companies or the huge success that they created if it weren't for all the other people that they had around them. And so if anything, if we're going to give them credit for any ability, it's not, their, rugged, raw talent as much as it is their ability to collect and curate a group of people who had a shared vision, a shared mission, and were willing to work alongside them to complete ultimately that dream. And so that is like one of the biggest lessons I've realized. And it's released a lot of burdens for me, right? Like, again, not to say that I'm not focused on, personal self-improvement, but I do feel better that question of like, do I have what it takes? Like, I don't ask myself that anymore because it really doesn't matter. Like, I know that I had what it took to get here. And where I'm going next, like, I don't have what it takes to get there on my own, but that's fine. That doesn't say anything negative about me. No one has what it takes to get to the next level on their own. So I've just stopped asking that question. Now I'm asking, do I have who it takes? Because I'm going to need the right people with the shared vision and the shared tenacity to get to where I'm going next. And so alongside that, and this kind of relates to the first lesson that I learned, the next biggest lesson that I learned is that you can't ascend to the next level without increasing your leadership, right? So again, if there's anything that we give these, big names and personality in our society who have achieved these great things, if there's anything that we give them, or if there's any talent that we, really celebrate in them, it shouldn't be necessarily, how smart they were or they were able to do this thing, but more so their talent and their ability to lead a group of people towards a shared vision, because you're going to need those people in order to achieve those goals. And so I would say that has been the biggest stretch for me. And it has been painful at times because I don't think people realize how much falls on your shoulders when you truly shift from being a solo entrepreneur or just, a solo coach to being a CEO, right? There's a lot of responsibility that ultimately falls on you. And again, because of our cultural conversation, we see, a lot of bad CEOs in the news, right? People who have swindled money or who have done horrible things or whatever. And we're like, down with CEOs, down with executive, compensation packages. But I will say, since I've been in this role with my little old small, low 7-figure company, right? My little team of 20 that we've been building, I'm like, oh my goodness. The amount of work that is required to run an operation at my little microscopic size, right, compared to, 9-figure, 10-figure companies, these billion-dollar companies with millions of employees, like, oh my goodness, I don't even know how these CEOs sleep at night. And so I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't think it's fair that CEOs can make all this money. Understand that the reason CEOs make this much money is because no one in their right mind would take on this level of responsibility and would do all of this work if it weren't for that level of compensation, especially for the level of the companies that they're running. Again, my business, is just now consistently crossing the 7-figure mark. I cannot imagine all of the stress and everything that goes into making sure these billion-dollar companies are afloat. And again, we do the, poor little rich person, or we don't care, or, again, our cultural attitude is very much like down with CEOs, but I feel like we don't credit good CEOs, right? Because we don't ever hear about them in the news because they're doing their job and they're not having scandals or, getting canceled because of crazy things that they're doing and they're saying. So think of all the unsung heroes, right? All the, unspoken of CEOs who are minding their business, literally minding their business, minding the company that they have been tasked with leading, and they're stewarding it well. Because that is the biggest lesson that I've learned as it relates to leadership, is that leadership is really about stewardship. And I think this is a tough transition for a lot of entrepreneurs to make, because when you get into this, oftentimes we want to do this for personal reasons, right? We're like, oh, I want to quit my job. I want to make a bunch of money. I want to live the laptop lifestyle. I want to travel with my family. I want to have money in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing wrong with that, right? And those are all things that I want as well. And so we build companies in order to service our lifestyle desires. However, as we start to grow and we start to try to reach, new heights, we start to have to bring on other people. We have to get tighter and more streamlined in our products and our services, the customer service that we're providing, all these things. You start to become responsible and accountable, right? Not just to your clients and your customers, who are obviously going to hold you accountable, but also to your staff, right? I mean, as I'm recording this, we're coming up on Christmas. I'm responsible for people's payroll, right? Like, I'm responsible for the money that lands in their bank account that they're literally going to use to put presents under the Christmas tree for their families. Like, I don't think people understand the weight of, you have to keep this afloat, not just for you, right? Because if it's just for you and you just want to make money and live a certain lifestyle, maybe you might be like, well, this is getting bigger than I thought it was, and to heck with this. Like, I'll quit and I'll go do something else in order to make money. But if you're really committed to your business and the vision ultimately that you want to create, there is a weightiness to the responsibility that you are now accountable to others. You're accountable to your staff. You're accountable to creating a positive work environment for them. You're accountable for their professional growth, right? It's not just the paychecks that you're providing them. If they're going to stay with you long term, you have to think about how you're structuring that in your company so that your people are able to grow and really exhibit their best gifts over time as they do things in your company. And yes, you do have to make sure that you're paying them consistently. Your employees don't care that, your clients defaulted on your payment plan, or someone who said that they were going to sign up didn't sign up or whatever. You still have to make that payroll day in and day out, 1st and the 15th, every 2 weeks. Your employees, your vendors, your contractors are depending on you. And I don't think people understand how much growth it requires personally for you to be willing to be a servant, essentially, because to be a leader is to serve others and to put yourself last, right? There's a famous book, Leaders Eat Last. You often have to take a back seat for the benefit of the company, for the benefit of your clients and your customers, for the benefit of your employees. And, it's a big weight to bear. I won't call it a burden, because I think, again, it's a joy to grow, to become the kind of person who has the capacity to put that on their shoulders. And so I'm grateful for it, but I've had to have hard conversations with myself. There have been nights that I've had to stay up really late, or nights that I've had to get up early, because I know that the buck ultimately stops with me. And so I think, CEO work is like very glamorized, but this year I've learned being a CEO is more akin to being like an ER doctor, right? You're the one who's getting pinged for everything. If there's fires, you're the one ultimately that has to put them out. And so part of good leadership, though, is also recognizing leadership in others. And so for me, this has been, a learning lesson in me recognizing others who are ready to step in that leadership capacity within my organization in their respective lane. And so that has alleviated a lot of the stress on me, where I'm like, oh, okay, I could put, other people who I know have the same tenacity that I do and have, are committed to the same vision that I'm committed to. They're just really good in operations, or they're just really good in finance, or they're just really good in marketing, and they can lead the team, under them. So yeah, building out this kind of organizational structure, I have a level of empathy for CEOs, for people who run larger organizations, and just for corporations or organizational frameworks that, I'll just be frank, I didn't have when I was first starting this entrepreneurial journey. All right, so the next lesson that I learned that might sound kind of contradictory to what I was just talking about in terms of having the right people on your team is that only you are the expert on you, right? Only you can be the expert on you. Only you can be the expert ultimately in terms of what's going to work well for your life, what's going to work well for your business. Like, you know you more than you think you do. And so I do think that this year I learned that in my rush, right, to build a team and to get experts and to, get leaders who can support me in this area in many respects, because I was tired of being the only one who was, all the decisions were coming to me and I had to make the decision in so many different parts of my business. That said, you ultimately know what's going to work. And it's important that you take the advice and you take the expertise that you are receiving and that you kind of fit it, for what you know is going to work for you. I know for me, we have redone our sales process. We've redone our marketing process. We've redone our instructional design process, right? How we build courses. We've even just personally, I've redone like my schedule in terms of how I'm doing things at home and spending more time with my kids and how I'm arranging their school schedule and all of that. And I got a lot of feedback and a lot of insight on like, the best way to do it is this way, or you should do things this way. And I kept getting frustrated, at least initially, especially at the beginning of the year, because I realized that I, again, was so like, I'm so tired of being the only one that like has to make all these decisions. I want to pass this off to somebody else. I want them to make all the decisions. So they were making the decision based on their expertise, but they're not experts in my business, or they're not experts in my household or whatever. They don't know exactly the way that I know things have to be done. And so while they brought expertise, they were missing that piece, and they were like, I wonder why this isn't working. Well, it's not working because I know that there's a specific way that we need to do things based on how my business is, or based on how my household is, or whatever. So I will say that in your, enthusiasm to build a team or to get people on your team, still understand that you're the visionary, you're the leader, you know the ins and outs of your business, you know the ins and outs of your household. If, you're getting support at home, you really know the ins and outs of your body. We talk about, health, and maybe you're getting a health coach or speaking with a doctor, etc. Like, you know you more than you think you do. And I think sometimes we want to give that authority away because we're tired, right? We're tired of being the only one that has to do everything. But I learned very early on that just because someone is an expert in this particular arena, and I've even hired them to help in this process, that doesn't mean I can just like shut my brain off and say, okay, you got it. It's all yours. Like, you're free to like do whatever it is that you want to do. I still need to be present, and I still need to at least oversee that process, at least in the beginning, until I can trust that they can think about things, at least in my business or in my life or in my household or whatever, the way that I think about them. But, you cannot delegate that responsibility. And so that's why I say previously, leadership really stretches you personally, because you do have to be able to maintain a bird's eye view of so many different pieces of your business in your life at once. And I think people aren't just used to being stretched in that regard. They're not used to having this level of responsibility on their shoulders. And again, they're not used to having their hands in like all these different pies and keeping tabs on everything. And so I am adjusting to like mentally keeping tabs on all of this stuff. Again, managing people. I've had to become better, and I've had to grow myself as a person. But part of that growth is not totally delegating all of the decision making away, still being mindful that I know what's best for me, trusting my own intuition and the experience that I've developed over time, and making sure that the advice that I'm receiving still fits within the bounds and the guidelines of what I ultimately know is going to work for myself and for my business. And the last lesson that I learned this year, it's going to sound cliche, but it's so true, is that faith can move mountains. Oh my goodness. There is so much that I am walking in, so much, again, that I'm achieving, different things that we are doing that I had no evidence, right? No indication that we were going to be successful at it, but I just literally moved on faith. And I say that this is important because I think so many people have really big dreams and they want to do big things, but they won't move until they know exactly how it's going to work out, right? They're like, no, and unless I know exactly what I'm selling and what my business is going to look like, and exactly how the process is going to work, and exactly how many clients I'm going to get, or whatever, even if it's not in a business context, exactly how things are going to work out in my professional life or in my personal life, they're not willing to take a first step. They're not willing to make a move. And I will say this year, like, I have stepped out on faith. I mean, every week, every single day, it seems like something else is coming up where I'm like, oh, being that leader, I'm going to have to make a decision that is a risk. And there is a chance that this might not work out and that this can fail. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to have to operate on faith that, it will work out. And I think that this is really a skill set. I mean, oftentimes we talk about faith as just this kind of like, woo-woo nebulous thing. But I also think that it is a skill set to constantly operate in faith when perhaps a lot of the evidence is saying like, danger, danger, this is risky. Or again, you don't know how this is going to work out. Is this really a move that you want to make? But again, if you believe in what you're doing, you believe that you're called to it. For me, it's my faith in God that's like, hey, if all of this, goes to nowhere, at least God has got me and he's going to make sure that I'm going to be taken care of. That really gives me the confidence to put one foot in front of the other, even if I don't know ultimately how this is going to end. So faith is a superpower. It truly can move mountains. And as you grow to achieve even more in your life, you're going to realize that one of the greatest skills that you can develop is making sure that you maintain and that you keep the faith. So those are my biggest lessons that I've learned for 2023. I would love to hear what your lessons are as well. And again, if you are as excited as I am about this coaching certification that we've launched, and this is something that you want to partner with us on and getting your accredited coaching certification through us, you can click the link below to learn all about it and apply. And if accepted, you'll be invited to a call with my enrollment team who will walk you through the entire process. All right, thanks so much for listening / watching this podcast. If you can't wait until my next one, make sure that you are definitely following me on Instagram and TikTok. My name on both is CourtneyLSanders. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.